Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Carl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be where you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show. Hi, I'm Laura Forehand. I'm here with the Desert Sanctuary podcast, and I'm actually flying solo today. I just got a wild hair about a couple weeks ago. Was doing a lot of thinking about just women in the church, maybe ex-pastors' wives, and the fact that we have tried for a long time, Carl and I, to get like ex-pastors' wives on here to talk about their experience, and it just seems so hard to do. And so I guess part of me was wondering why that is. And so I invited such a treasured friend of mine, and really we've never met in person, but we know each other. Probably happened over COVID. I don't know, Sherri, you can remind me how we met, but when everything was online, somehow our paths crossed. And so today I'm going to be having a very wonderful conversation with Sherri Bothwell. And so Sherri, welcome so much to the podcast. It's great to see your face. I feel like I haven't seen your face in a long time. So welcome back to the Desert Sanctuary. You've been on before.
Yes.
So we want to welcome you back, and just maybe start out with telling the listeners a little bit about who you are, whatever you want to share.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's been, I really honestly don't remember how we met, but I know it was online through a deconstruction community. My online presence has kind of exploded since 2003. It's been a wild ride. But yeah, I was a pastor's wife, and I am an advocate for religious abuse victims. And I really have a heart for people who are still stuck within it. But my heart has always been for women married to men in ministry, specifically. I've literally gotten hundreds of messages from women all over the world married to men in ministry. They are silently suffering.
Yeah.
They really are. And a lot of them won't even pursue counseling because of the teachings in the church about loyalty to your husband, never saying anything negative about your husband, especially when you are in ministry. I think you really have to toe the line, because there are so many things that can disqualify a man from being a pastor. I know that I really always had that in the back of my mind, always. I was very aware of my public persona to people, how my kids came across to people. It was a lot of pressure.
Yep.
Because this was our livelihood.
Yep.
And that's what these women are going through, but they are not happy. And they don't have anybody that they can really confide in that understands truly what they've been through, what they're going through.
Right.
Because they're surrounded by lay people that they're supposed to be the example for. And in our circles, in my circles, nothing could ever be wrong with the pastor and his family. Because you were the one that people would go to for counseling, for advice, for spiritual leadership. And if you didn't have the answers and the success and the victory for all these things in your own life, people wouldn't trust you, or they wouldn't have any credibility with other people. So a lot of it was there was a lot of imposter syndrome. I don't know about you, but for me, um,
Yeah.
because we were just like everybody else. We weren't special. Like it, we struggled with the same things that other people did. We were very discouraged a lot of the time. Felt like we were pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, just trying to get through the week. And like, it seemed like there was this vicious cycle on Saturday. There was all this pressure to be ready for Sunday. Sunday was the big day, this push where you just go, 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 go. And then Monday, you just completely crash.
Yep.
And you experience these high highs and low lows on such a consistent basis that it does take its toll.
Yeah.
And as the pastor's wife, you're not really going through it to the same degree that your husband is, but you still have to deal with your husband's depression.
Right.
And discouragement. And you frame it all as spiritual battles, and everything is a matter of life and death. So your amygdala is on fire. You're constantly in fight or flight mode. And you really never get a day off because you're constantly on call. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
When you add kids to the picture or homeschooling, you know, all of the unpaid labor that women do behind the scenes, there's just so much pressure.
Yeah.
That people don't see.
I agree. Yeah.
And we don't talk about it.
And it's so interesting that we don't talk about it. And I want to kind of dive into that a little bit. But do you think because when you're talking, Sherri, I'm like almost having this like visceral response in my body because I totally get what you're saying. There were so many times that I just knew what was happening wasn't right. I don't know if that's a correct word or not, but wasn't right, or what was being preached. And many times it was from my husband, right? Wasn't like, just did not, there was just this internal battle within me. Like, I can't, like, for example, like when our son was born, I remember just standing over his crib and just sobbing and thinking, he's just such an angel. I mean, I remember saying that to my husband. He was like, why are you crying? He was worried, and I said, he's just such an angel. And in my head, I'm going, there's no way this child is depraved and sinful. There's no way. Like, I feel like, and I tell my son this all the time, I think he was the beginning. Having him was the beginning of my deconstruction, because I just could not believe that language anymore. But do you think those messages to, and you can answer this for women in the church or pastors' wives, which could, because you're both and I'm both, but are those messages, do you feel like they were implicit or like just obvious messages? Like you actually heard those messages, maybe a combination of both?
Yeah, I think it was both for sure, because there's only so much really that you can preach about and teach about in the Bible. And when you're in it for decades, like I was, you hear things over and over and over and over again, and it becomes conditioning. And so there are a lot of implicit messages in the explicit messages, especially for women. But I think it's also because we tend to be more emotionally intelligent, and there's a lot of nuance in the way that women think. Whereas it seems like men are more, is a general rule, more straightforward, and things are black and white. And I just feel like as women, we see things more, I don't know how to explain it completely. Everything is viewed from the lens of, if you're a mom especially, how it's going to affect your kids or other people. I know the messaging around hell was a huge pressure for me because I didn't want anybody to go there.
Right.
It wasn't just my kids. It was so many amazing people, like my grandparents. That was when I started really deconstructing it, because my grandpa was an agnostic and my grandma was a Catholic.
Mm.
And we didn't believe that they were saved, you know? So when they died, they were literally the most amazing people I had ever known. And the idea that they would die and go to hell was just so egregiously unjust to me.
Right, right.
And I literally could not cope with that. It was not acceptable to me to believe that. And I really had a problem with God from that moment on. And I really did have a problem with it before that, but that's when it really hit home, because it was people that I knew and I loved and I trusted, and that meant the world to me. And then when I had kids, of course, that was just reinforced, because I've been taking care of babies since I was 9 years old, and they're amazing. And I didn't believe that of any of the kids that I've ever taken care of. I would never treat people that way, and it was hard for me to worship a God that would treat people that way in good conscience and integrity. It was a betrayal of my conscience and integrity to believe in and worship such a God. And so while you're dealing with all of this pressure, spiritual pressure as a pastor's wife, you're also dealing with all of that doubt and fear, and all of your questions that you're not allowed to ask.
Yeah.
So it is a very traumatizing experience, because you are, honestly, that is spiritual abuse. And that's what you're living with all day, every day as a pastor's wife. You have to have the answers for yourself. I know for me, a lot of my Bible study and things was so that I would be able to counter arguments, so I would be equipped to give an answer to every man that asks me a reason of the hope that is within me with meekness and fear. And it's triggering for me to even quote that. But it was so much a part of my life that if I didn't have the answers, if I was afraid of something, if I was doubtful about something, I dove in and I tried to find the answers. And I didn't just read the approved books or preachers or, that I was allowed to. And the reason was because I wanted to know what the arguments were so that I would be able to answer them effectively. And that's kind of how I became a Christian apologist, because it's just a byproduct of living your life as a Christian and having questions. And if you go to one person, they will give you one answer. If you go to 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. And I had to look at these things for myself, because every single time I asked a question and I went to look for the answer myself, I didn't get anything close to any of the answers that people gave me. And so that leads into, like, I wasn't allowed to be a theologian. I wasn't allowed to be a Bible scholar and actually have the qualifications. But they say that if you study something for like more than 7 years, you basically have a PhD in that subject. And I studied it for 33 years. I taught myself a lot of the original language, just so that I would be able to understand the historical and cultural context. And like, I had more biblical knowledge than my husband did as the pastor. I did. I had more biblical knowledge than every single pastor that I had, except for when I was a kid, in my adult life. And so when you're sitting there and you're listening to these messages and they're not right, and you can't say anything,
right?
That is a level of grief and frustration that I don't know that I've ever experienced in any other context.
Right. What's some of that messaging that, just really started making you think? I mean, you mentioned hell. You mentioned hell. I think that was a big one for me. Like I said, especially after our son was born, I just, But somehow, I mean, I give you all the credit for really diving in as much as you did. In fact, when I was talking to Carl about doing this, I said she's just so well versed in, like, the Bible and just theology, whereas I am not. I'll be the first one to admit that. Like, I've never read the entire Bible cover to cover, mainly because I think I have like a little bit of a learning disability or comprehension issue, so that when things get very muddied, like geology stuff, and I just am like, never mind. I'm like, I could be reading the words, but they mean nothing to me. But what was some of the other messaging that just wasn't sitting right with you? But then also my question is, so how did you take that to the next level or the next step? Because I got very quiet in myself, Sherri. I knew, like, when you said at the beginning, you were talking about it's very hard for women to come forward because that's your livelihood. That was always my biggest fear, as I don't want to be the one to bring my husband's ministry down.
Right.
Although I jokingly say, half-heartedly, because I think partially it's true, I did.
Me too.
I mean, my actions brought my husband's ministry down. So
absolutely.
I used to say that with some shame. I don't say that with any shame anymore.
No.
So, but anyway, going back to my question. So, like, the messaging of hell, yes. What were some other messagings that you received that you were just like, this is not sitting right with me?
There were two, actually, that come to mind. Hell was the first one. The second one was submission, the idea of submission. And the third one was spiritual gifts. So, submission is one of my favorite topics because there's nothing loving about it. Hierarchy is literally built into the concept because sub means under. And hierarchy is implicit. It implies that your will is inferior to that of your husband or any other person or God, and people say, oh, it's about mutual submission. That's not possible, because if everybody is putting their will under that of the other person, nothing would ever get done.
True.
And it's never in the best interest of the one doing the submitting, even in the context of God. And it is always selfish entitlement on the part of the one being submitted to, even if it's a God. And I think what really got my attention early on was that the passages on marriage specifically were always followed by passages on slavery using the exact same verbiage for husbands and masters and wives and slaves.
Wow.
Right? I know. And so I actually did that study into the meaning of the words, and they actually mean what they mean. It is, the wife is akin to a slave and the husband is akin to a master. And if you actually look at the word husband, that's basically what it means. Like, they own you. It's cultivating. I didn't come prepared.
No, you're fine.
For that word study. Yep. But I remember doing it, and I remember being just gutted by it. And, I remember asking, my husband and I went back and forth on a lot of things. And I don't see myself as better than him in any way. But I also do not see myself as worse than him in any way.
Or less than, yeah.
Right. And I never have, because, all of the things that they say that pastors do, as far as leading and making decisions and all of these things, those were my spiritual gifts. That's what I was able to do. I am able to make a decision right off the bat. I would never look at a man and say, now what do we do? What should we do? Ever. It would never even enter my consciousness to do so. I always know what to do, and I'm willing to make the decision and live with the consequences. Whereas I found that my husband, he is terrible at making decisions. And I really honestly think it's religious trauma, that innate distrust of yourself, not trusting your heart, not trusting your own judgment. And I've never had that problem because I can't think of a time other than being a Christian and the things that made me do because it made me stop thinking logically. I can't think of a time that I've made a decision that was detrimental to me and other people because I'm automatically thinking about how this is going to affect other people,
Right.
Whereas I feel like with men, they often don't, and so as far as the whole submission thing, though, it's convenient for men to teach these things. They benefit from it and they don't see how harmful it is to women to constantly be given the messaging that you are not enough, that you are too emotional to make decisions, that you are more easily deceived than a man. These things are not true. They are not true. It has been scientifically proven that women make better leaders than men because of their innate emotional maturity and intelligence, and their ability to see the bigger picture and automatically know how decisions are going to affect other people, and that's what motivates us.
Right.
So that was really hard for me as a woman in the church because I had all the spiritual gifts of being a pastor, and I was not allowed to use them in the church when the spiritual gifts were specifically for being used within the church. But if you are a woman, you're not allowed to. And if you are, it's only as men give you permission or dictate to you how you are going to use your spiritual gifts. And I don't even believe in spiritual gifts anymore. Those are just who I've always been. Even as a kid, I was a leader.
Right. Right.
And I've that just kind of gave a name to it. But it was crazy that I scored in these tests so strong in these areas. And just because of what's between my legs, I was not allowed to use my knowledge of the Bible.
Yep.
I wasn't even allowed to teach boys over the age of 12 in my husband's church. I gave birth to my kids 12 years ago, and it was him and his friends that I would have been teaching, and it was not allowed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember because my big thing was I could teach little ones Sunday school and I could work in the nursery, things like that. But did you have any of this messaging growing up? I mean, I feel like you've kind of alluded to it, or was this something that happened after marriage? And the reason I ask is because just in my own deconstruction, I've had to do a lot of reflecting. I've had to do a lot of reflecting on just my passive nature, like I was kind of sharing earlier. I feel like, I think that's what I admire most about you is you dive in, you dig in, and you're not afraid to share what you know with those who want to know more. But looking back at my family of origin, I do feel like I've been there has been a part of me that's been passive all along. So I feel like I kind of moved into this pastor's wife persona pretty fluidly. I would say the right things to Carl, I'm not going to be the typical pastor's wife. Don't ask me to play the piano or the organ, mainly because I can't. But, I'm not going to be the typical pastor's wife. And our kids are going to be, our kids are kids. Just because their dad's a pastor doesn't mean that they're exceptional and they're always going to be well behaved and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like the pressures of being a pastor's wife and ministry and all that kind of stuff kind of lent itself to me being that passive
Mm-hmm.
person when I was a pastor's wife, when I was inside the church.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, for me, looking back at my family of origin and kind of where I came from, there was a lot of aha moments for me as a pastor's wife. But I'm curious if that's similar or different to you.
I think it's different. Well, I don't know. That's a really hard question for me to answer because my family of origin was completely different from the churches that I was raised in. Like, my mom and dad never taught me the things that messaging. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
my dad always wanted sons, and he never got them. He had my sister and I. So he took us hunting and he
Hmm.
taught us how to work on cars. Like, I learned how to drive with the stick shift.
Hmm.
And before I was allowed to get my license, I had to know how to charge a battery, change spark plugs, be able to change my own tires, that type of thing. So I wasn't given the messaging that women couldn't do what men can do within my family. And I don't think my mom and dad ever really bought into that.
Hmm.
But I was the first person saved in my family. I was the one that was most gung ho about everything. I was the one always reading my Bible and praying and going soul winning and doing all of the things. And my family just kind of tagged along a lot of the time. A
Hmm.
lot of it was because I went to a Christian school and church attendance was mandatory in order to get a reduced tuition and things. So, like, I don't really feel like at first my parents were all that bought in.
Hmm.
But even when they weren't reinforcing these things. But I was there so much. Literally every time the doors were open for everything, unless I physically couldn't be there because I was too sick.
Hmm.
Um, and so it was constant indoctrination, constantly being told that. I mean, I was raised in purity culture.
Hmm.
Girls were not allowed to wear pants. Everything was about protecting men from girls and women. But the men were the ones who were supposed to lead. They're supposed to be these strong men, but they can be tempted by an elbow.
It's so much
Like,
contradiction. It's insane. It is insane.
it is. And as a kid, your prefrontal cortex is
Nope.
not fully
Yep.
developed.
Right.
You have no choice but to believe that what the adults in your life are telling you is true.
That's right.
So, even if it's not your parents, you are looking up to adults, your pastors, your Sunday school teachers. I was in King's Kids, Awana.
Hmm.
I had people in my ear. It feels like 24/7. And
Hmm.
when you factor in all of the Bible study that I was doing because I had so many questions, it was a lot, you know. And when you dive into the Bible, I was convinced when I was 12 years old that God hated women and girls.
Mm.
Absolutely convinced, just based on what I read in the Old Testament. As an 11 and 12-year-old, I saw it, but I was not allowed to, I wasn't allowed to have that opinion.
Hmm.
I wasn't allowed to have an opinion on a lot of things throughout the entirety of my Christian life, Um, I don't know. I really, to answer your question, no, I really didn't get a lot of that from my family of origin, but I have always been encouraged by them to be a leader because that's who I am. My parents wanted me to be who I am, and they accepted me for who I was, and they cultivated that in me. But I do think that it's just a matter of different personalities
Hmm.
because I was completely the opposite from you. I don't go into myself. I'm not passive. If I don't say it with my voice, my face says it for me. So
I love that.
I couldn't get away with anything. But when my husband was a pastor, I got to the point where I think in 2013 was when he was voted in as pastor. And that's when my deconstruction began, because I was really sick and I had a lot of time to think about things. And I knew that I didn't want my life to be what it was because I was so sick. I started envisioning what I wanted my life to be. And I started asking myself, if money were not an issue, if marriage was not an issue, if I could be and do anything that I wanted to be and do, what would my life look like? And that's when I just started being me, unapologetically myself. And if people had a problem with that, then it was their loss, you know? So I did, if my husband said something that I didn't agree with, I would raise my hand in Sunday school or, you know, in less formal settings. And I would ask him, why? You know, what about this passage of scripture? What about this doctrine? Like, and I would always put him on the spot. And he's really good on his feet. He thinks fast on his feet. So he would be able to answer and like smooth things over. But a lot of times he was very honest and he would say, I don't know, you know, and I love that about him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, but that also bothered a lot of the people in the church because he's the pastor. He's supposed to know, you know, and it bothered the people in the church. I apologize. Because it bothered the people in the church because I was not submissively and passively supporting my husband in what he was teaching. So it was a problem.
Yeah.
But when you bring up problems, I don't want to say my husband did this, although I think in some ways he did. But the tendency is for the men of the church to make you the problem.
Yeah.
You're bashing churches. You have a problem with authority. You're rebellious. You have a Jezebel spirit. And as the men of the church famously told me, you are a new age Jezebel feminist that needs a good spanking, and we wonder who will be man enough to give it to you.
Oh, wow.
So, right. I mean, they will do whatever they have to do to maintain control. And when you step out of line, that correction, that punishment is swift and sure.
Yeah.
But when they do something, so as the pastor's wife, I knew these people. They would come to my husband and myself as a couple for counseling. And there was never anything in my life even remotely close to the sin in these men's lives that they would come to us because they were having trouble having victory over overcoming, you know, whether it was depression or anger or pornography or whatever, you know, and yet they wanted to vilify me because I wasn't willing to sit back and acquiesce to their demands and defer to their ignorance, you know, because I know what I know and they don't know what I know, but they assume that they do.
Right.
And again, it was always making me the problem instead of facing the issue at hand and dealing with it. And I'm not alone. A lot of the women that have reached out to me, that's what they're dealing with.
Absolutely.
If they ask a question, it results in their husband getting mad at them. You know, it's a fight.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with it in your home. You're dealing with it in the church by all of the men. And then, like, when we left the IFB church before my husband became the pastor, we were dealing with other pastors who were not believing that what we were telling them about the pastor, that, I mean, he was a problem. They would not believe us unless it was of a sexual nature. They did not want to hear what we had to say about why we left that church, because to them it wasn't a good enough reason, whatever it was.
And I think that's so interesting because, you know, before we we hit record, like you shared with me some of your notes, and that was something that you put in there. And like, I feel like even sexual issues get swept under the rug, or we just move the pastor to, another church or,
Mhm.
whatever.
Yep.
So, I don't know. Like, I feel like it is like sexual inappropriateness is
Mhm.
definitely an issue in our churches.
Absolutely.
And you feel like um in your church, like the pastors would listen to you if that was the problem. I'm using air quotes, the problem.
Right.
Or because I feel like anymore we just hear about so many different denominations that just sweep that stuff under the rug, or
Sure.
try to take care of it, let's just keep it between us kind of
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
And
No, I think that that's exactly what they would have done, but they just didn't take me seriously because it wasn't of a sexual nature. So even if they would have listened to me, that's
okay.
exactly how they would have handled it. But if you just look at what's going on with the Southern Baptist Convention right now, that whole issue is just so wrong
Mhm.
because they care more about making sure that they are not associating with churches that have women pastors
Yep.
than they do about the abuse, the sexual,
Hmm.
like, this is scandal
It is.
within the Southern Baptist
Hmm.
Convention. They have made this their hill they want to die on,
Yep.
their main issue, rather than the abuse. And it's just so classic because the roots of the Southern Baptist Convention, they became what they are because they believed in segregation.
Hmm.
They were racist. It was about slavery.
Yep.
Of course, they are going to. When you realize that these passages about marriage are closely followed by passages on slavery, they're being honest
Yeah.
about what they believe. They are being consistent about what they believe. But what they're not seeing or they're willfully ignorant of is that those are the very things that foster abuse.
Yes.
So,
100%.
like,
Yep.
the whole thing is just so full circle. Like, I feel like I left the church only
Hmm.
for the government to become what it is,
I
and I
know.
can't escape it.
I
And
know.
then everything with the Southern Baptist Convention, it's just like things that I've been saying for years and years,
Hmm.
over a decade. And people, these men still don't get it. And I just, I've seen a lot of like Sheila Ray Gregoire and other women online saying, and even men saying, if you are a woman within the Southern Baptist Convention, run. Now is the time to get out.
Uh-huh.
This is not okay. But I know that as a woman within it, that probably wouldn't have motivated me either. Like, until it actually affects you personally in
Hmm.
a way that you can no longer ignore,
Hmm.
you're probably not going to be willing to face the risks
Hmm.
and the ramifications
Hmm.
of making a stink about it.
Hmm.
Like,
So what was that for you?
the risks.
Yeah.
Well, of course, my husband was supported by the church, so he had to choose between
Hmm.
me or the church.
Hmm.
And so we lost our livelihood. I was afraid that meant that I was going to lose my house. And he remodels homes kind of on the side. That's what he does. So he's remodeled our house. And I love this house because his fingerprints are all over it. And he has made it so beautiful.
Hmm.
And so I didn't want to lose that.
Hmm.
My cars, I was afraid I would lose my kids because that's what everybody says. When you leave the faith, you're going to lose your kids and all this bad stuff is going to happen to you. I definitely was afraid that I was going to lose my support system because all of my friends and all of
Hmm.
my family, immediate and extended on my side and my husband's, were all Christians.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a very real thing.
Yep.
Um, just being vilified,
Hmm.
losing, I just, it's a hard thing to be willfully misunderstood,
Oh,
you know?
100%. Yeah. I think that was a lot. of my sadness over, like I knew I had to get out, like for my own mental
Mhm.
well-being. I mean, I think that I was out mentally way before Carl ever stopped being a
Mhm.
pastor. I mean, I was, like I said, I think I started deconstructing when our son was born. But man, what you're saying is absolutely true. I mean, there's so many fears that keep you in, and those fears may be real. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
losing your
Mhm.
livelihood, losing a salary, you know? I mean, I think
Mhm.
that is why Carl stayed in for as long as he did. He was bivocational,
Mhm.
and, that we were used to that income. It wasn't a ton of money where we live in very rural part of the country, but it was something. And,
Right.
once that's gone, then it's like, okay, now we have to like reevaluate, everything.
Everything.
So, and
Mhm.
then like you're talking about your support system, I mean, I have struggled with, like, I just want to come to my own defense. I don't want people
Yes.
misrepresenting me and saying that I'm
Mhm.
something that I'm not, which is the whole reason we left our last church, and I'm so thankful that, you know, Carl did stand up for me in that situation. And I just think that that was kind of the one of the last straws for
Yes.
him as well. But just being misrepresented, that is a very scary thing for somebody like me who just, I want everybody to get along. Like I said, I can be very passive and I just want everybody to get along and I don't want anybody, but you bring up something that was, as you were talking, was in the back of my head. I always have this question, like, did our country become this way because of the church, or is the church this way because of our country? I feel like it's so muddied anymore, you
Right.
know?
It is.
Because if you're talking about things in the Bible, but if you think about our history, I mean, slavery's been a part of our history. And is that
Mhm.
because the people that wrote the Bible, said that God ordained that? And so we say, okay, I guess it's all right. Or, you know what I mean? I feel like it's
Mhm.
so muddied.
I guess it doesn't feel as muddied to me, just because I've done so much research about it and I have like a 10,000-foot view of it.
Hmm.
The Bible and our culture has been largely patriarchal.
Hmm.
And patriarchy is nothing more than power hungry, control freak men who have to exert power and control over people. So it's both. They feed
Hmm.
off of each other because they're both very, very just about men. It's not holy. It's
Hmm.
not sanctified. It's not even right. It is completely selfish and wrong. And there have been a lot of successful matriarchies. Once you start looking into it, it's actually really cool how a lot of cultures are not patriarchal, but the
Hmm.
ones that are, they start the wars. And
Yeah.
most of the wars that were started by religious men, um, one way or the other.
Hmm.
So it's both. It's very corrupt, corruptible.
Hmm.
And I think there's a lot of ingrained misogyny in our culture,
Hmm.
both in men and women. Um, and I mean, I see it all day, every day on my posts on Facebook. It is absolutely unbelievable to me. Um, these men give themselves away.
Yeah.
Their defensiveness is proof of their guilt because
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but if I'm reading something online about patriarchy or about the government or, about men or women, I don't automatically center myself in those conversations. If they don't apply to me, I move along. I
Right.
don't disagree.
Yep.
But these men have to, like, they have this irresistible need to be defensive, which is
Hmm.
just proof of their guilt. They'll say not all men, Well, yes, it is. Maybe not all men, but it's definitely you because you're the one talking about all men. Nobody else here is talking about all men.
Right.
So people who are not guilty do not center themselves in conversations that have nothing to do with them and then take exception.
Yeah. Ooh,
Like,
that's good. Yeah.
it's just doesn't, it's irrational, it's
Mm-hmm.
illogical, and every argument is purely emotional.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which
I
is funny
see a
because
lot of
we're the
that.
emotional people, but
Right, that's what they say. Men are logical, women are
yeah.
emotional.
Yeah.
That is not true. I mean, I don't know
No.
about you, but the women in my family are very logical. My mom never cries. My dad, you look at him, and he starts crying.
Mm-hmm.
My
Mm-hmm.
husband's the same way. So,
And there's
like,
nothing wrong with that. You know
no,
what I
not
mean?
at
Like there's
all.
nothing wrong
I
with
love
the
it.
fact that we all have, a logical side. Maybe that might
Yep,
be more predominant in some people. And we all have an emotional side. And sometimes
that's
people
right.
let that show a lot more than the logical side. I mean, my daughters are way more logical. I mean, I
Mhm.
look at them and I'm just like, you guys are amazing because I was
Uh-huh.
like, at your age, I was not like that. But they have done a lot of critical thinking, despite the fact that their dad was a pastor and their mom was steeped in all of that as well. I mean, so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about sex because I feel like that is some of the messaging that I still hear
Hmm.
in my own head, if that makes sense
Yes,
to you. So sometimes I
absolutely.
still think, and this has I want to preface this by saying like Carl does not say this to me, but there is that messaging in my head that when my husband wants sex, that it is my
Mhm.
duty to do that, whether I want to or not. Now we have had I mean, this is the best thing that's come out of my deconstruction is we have had some really great open conversations about that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And in a very positive, healthy way that I think has strengthened our marriage because, I can say, I'm just not feeling it tonight. And he'll be like, okay,
Mhm.
that's fine.
Right.
And vice versa,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
so I say that with, gosh, I hope someday I can get rid of that messaging, because
Mhm.
I do feel like it is detrimental. Because then, even if he says, hey, that's okay, I get it, I'm tired sometimes too, or I don't feel very good today either, um, there's this guilt that washes over me. Like,
Sure.
you're not living up to your, quote unquote,
Mhm.
wifely duties or whatever. Your
Right.
body is your husband's body kind of thing, which again goes
Sure.
back to that slave mentality if you think
Yes,
about it.
it
So I guess
does.
what do you have to say about that? Not specifically to me, but really just to anybody
Sure.
that might be really struggling with that.
Yes, purity culture is rape culture. It just
Mm,
is. Um, and it is so damaging to women.
yep.
To boys and men too, but to girls and women especially. Um, I love Sheila Ray Gregoire's work on this, and I don't agree with her theologically because I'm not a believer anymore. But
Mhm.
I wish that I had her when I was a pastor's wife. Because her teaching, her research is absolutely invaluable. Um, but these messages actually cause like um, different physical, what is it called? Vaginismus or something like that,
Okay.
where it's painful to have
Uh-huh.
sex.
Uh-huh.
Um, but also like the feelings of guilt around sex
Hmm.
are very pervasive. Like I have women who are in their 50s and 60s who are still like messaging me saying, I still feel like I don't, like I'm obligated.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy it, but I also feel like I shouldn't enjoy it because that's not Right.
Oh,
Because
interesting. Okay.
we're so programmed up until marriage to stifle that part of our humanity because it's evil, it's dirty, whatever. And then all of a sudden you get a legal piece of paper and you're supposed to flip that switch and basically be his porn star,
Right.
on demand. And, I actually did a post recently on this, on 1 Corinthians 7, verse 4, where it says, the woman does not have authority over her own body, but her husband does. And the husband does not have authority over his body, but the wife does. And that is the Bible teaching marital rape.
Yeah.
That's all that it is. And everybody's like, oh, no. You're overlooking the fact that the husband doesn't have power over his body either. But we all know that sex without consent in marriage is not an issue for men. It is an issue for women. It is a woman's issue because you never hear men being taught in churches, oh, you need to give your wife sex whenever she wants it.
Right.
I never heard that message,
Nope.
but I heard that as a woman, it was my obligation and duty to give my husband sex whenever he wanted it, or else he would go out and find somebody else.
That's right.
Or he would be tempted, or he would, look at other women. And the women were blamed for everything. It was always our responsibility as the wives to keep the men from stumbling, to keep our husbands from sinning, to keep our husbands from straying. And if they did stray or they did do something wrong, then the question was always asked of the wife, how often are you giving him sex? Are you withholding sex? And that word withhold is very telling because it implies that you are not giving somebody something that they are entitled to, that is theirs.
Right.
So, I think a lot of it is just people not understanding what consent is. And I tell my boys, and even my daughter, unless it is an enthusiastic yes, it is a no.
Right.
It is non-consensual. So, and I know that sometimes I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess, I might be able to get in the mood, but still there's that pressure there. And anything that is coercive is rape.
Yeah.
It's non-consensual sex.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you've heard about the YouTube tea video that talks about where if somebody's asking you if you would like a cup of tea, unless you say, oh yeah, I would love a cup of tea, you don't ask somebody over and over and over again, or would you like a cup of tea? Or if they say no, try to talk them into having a cup of tea. It's the same thing. And I actually really appreciate Megan. I don't ever know how to say
South Benninger.
Benninger. Yes. I love her because she and her husband talked about this early on in my deconstruction. And they were talking about, like if you want a sandwich, don't wait for your spouse to make you a sandwich. Don't expect your spouse to make you a sandwich. Take care of it yourself. If your spouse doesn't want to make you a sandwich, make yourself a sandwich.
Right.
That's not allowed. Self-pleasure is not allowed in Christian marriage. And there are so many things that are not allowed. And I loved how you said that you and Carl have had very open conversations about this, because my husband and I have too. And it's been very freeing to be able to just explore our sexuality, and find out what it is that, for me, what I really enjoy, and I never did that because I wanted to be a good girl, and it was just a part of myself that I shut off. And so that's been a really hard thing for me to wake back up in myself. And I've been looking for actually a sex therapist, and they're available, but they're so booked.
Yeah.
This
I
is
mean
an issue.
that could be a good thing because maybe people like you said are starting to wake up to.
Yes.
I tell you, I mean, not to give like too much information away or anything, but I mean, Carl had a stroke 4.5 years ago.
Right.
He had a heart attack 3 months ago. Sex is not going to be the same. You
Right.
have, and it's okay to explore different. In fact, I had just been to the doctor, and I have such a great doctor. And she was just like, because I was telling her, that Carl had a heart attack. And so, um, I don't, we'll have to make this explicit on YouTube or whatever. But I mean, so like sex is not the conventional way right now. And
Sure.
so, but she says there's lots of ways to have sex. And I'm like, you're
Yes.
right. You're
Mhm.
right. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that in the church, we are told this is the one way to do
Hmm.
it and do not
Right.
deviate. Do not
Sure.
deviate. And, one thing that you had said also about, even in marriage, how we are responsible for our husbands. I mean, we start that when our girls are young. I mean,
Little,
guilty. I'm raising my
yes.
hand guilty because,
Yes.
you know, we've had to undo a lot. Uh,
Hmm.
what's the word I'm looking for? We've had to undo a lot of misinformation that we gave our
Sure.
daughters,
Yeah.
and it is okay to explore your sexuality outside of marriage. I mean,
Yes.
that might be hard for some people to hear, but
No, I know.
how do you know what you like, or if you're compatible if
Exactly.
you're not
Yes.
exploring, those things?
That's right. I know. And that's what I've told all of my kids, that they are free to explore their sexuality,
Hmm.
whatever that looks like, whether
Right.
it is bi, gay, you know, all
Yep.
of the LGBTQ plus stuff.
Yep.
I will love my kids no matter
That's right.
what.
That's right.
Um, and I am very accepting of, like, some of my best friends are people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, and they have helped me so much in just being able to relax and enjoy sex, to
Hmm.
really embrace that part of myself without
Hmm.
shame. Um, and I think there's a lot of ingrained shame.
Oh.
I feel like some of this indoctrination, and I've said this for many years, that I think I'm going to be living with the ramifications of it, the
Hmm.
result of it for the rest of my life, because
Hmm.
it's like trying to remove the egg from an already baked cake. It's
Hmm.
so ingrained in us.
Hmm.
Um, but over time, you really do find ways of overcoming that guilt and that shame and that fear. And it kind of ties into the whole health thing, because I have a lot of people who are texting me and messaging me all the time about their fear of hell. Like, I know in my head that it is not real, but I still have a very real fear
Yeah.
that if I do certain things, I am going to go to hell, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and so, like, it's the entire belief system is built on guilt, shame, and fear.
Yeah.
Um, and I often refer to it as fog, fear, obligation, and guilt. But no
Mm.
matter how you look at it, it's not a religion of love,
Oh, you're right.
because you are believing in God because you're afraid of what he's going to do to you if you
Hmm.
don't.
Hmm.
That's what it boils down
Yeah.
to. And you can't live your life like that. You're going, Christians say, oh, if I live my life as a Christian and I die and find out that God isn't real, I have lost nothing. And that is so not true.
Yeah.
You have lost really being able to be present in your
Yeah.
life and
100%.
enjoying it, embracing it,
Hmm.
and,
And whatever that
just,
looks like for you. I mean,
yes, absolutely,
because
without guilt.
yeah, I feel like, church is a very structured organization and they
Mhm.
structure the way you need to live your life if you're going to be part of this organization. And
Right.
that goes all the way to the bedroom. It
It
it really
does.
does.
It
It really
does.
does. Like I said at the beginning, I feel like it's so hard. Like, I'm so grateful to have this conversation. It is like we didn't really have anything planned. It's raw, it's real.
Yeah.
I've had conversations with Megan South Benninger as well.
Mhm.
But why do you think it's so hard to get, pastors' wives or women in church to, and maybe they're just not there. I mean, I remember a
Yeah.
time that I wasn't there, I
Sure.
have to remember
Yeah.
that. But
Hmm.
sometimes I feel it's so hard for women to just open up like this with each
Right.
other and just say, I have some real questions about some of this
Hmm.
stuff.
I think they do, because I know a lot of women have opened up to me
That's
privately, but
awesome. Yeah.
they would never publicly talk about this
Yeah.
because it's just they already are struggling coping with their lives,
Yeah.
and they can't afford to make waves.
Mm.
Like, honestly, when all of this stuff came to a head at our church, stuff hit the fan
Hmm.
like big time. It
Hmm.
was huge.
Yeah.
Like, these these are not small issues. Like, these are things that our kids will never forget as long as they live.
Right.
That no matter what, I will never ever ever forgive the people involved or have a relationship with them ever again, no
Yeah.
matter what.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just
Yep.
completely not even an option. Um and that forgiveness is a whole other issue that I had to work through, because it basically it makes you a perpetual victim,
Yeah.
because you are never going to be able to really truly forgive the unforgivable in
Hmm.
in honesty.
Yeah.
You can say it and you can try it, and that's what the Bible says, forgive 70 times 7, but some things are unforgivable, and you can't recover from them.
Hmm.
Like, the harm that these people did to my family was like inexcusable, and like there aren't words to express
Hmm.
what they did. And they really believed that they were doing the right thing. They really believed that they were doing this for God.
Yep.
And yeah, there's just, no matter what, even if they deconstruct, even if they come to me and say, "Oh, you were right, and I'm so sorry," that's great, and I'm happy for you. But no,
Yeah. Right.
we are not going to have a relationship. No.
Yeah.
Um,
Which, yeah, we interviewed somebody one time that said forgiveness is the F word. And it
yes.
really is. And I have learned that it is okay. Like, I do not, like, I do get some pushback from people like, oh, you need to forgive. And I'm just like,
Yes.
no, I
No.
don't.
Right.
I talk quite often about my father who hasn't spoken to me or my sisters in over, let's see, my son will be 35 this year. So it's been 33 years, almost 33
Oh,
years.
wow.
And, I tell people all the time, like, if he were to show up on my doorstep,
Mm-hmm.
like, I would greet him. I would,
Mm-hmm.
be hospitable.
Sure.
But will there is no forgiveness for the
Right.
choices that he made. Why do I have to forgive him for the choices that he made?
That's
And
right.
that relationship is broken. It will
Yes.
never be what it
Hmm.
was.
Right.
And there was a point in my life where I thought, but I would have a relationship with him. It just wouldn't be like a, father-daughter relationship. But I am to the point in my life where it's just like, I'm
Mm-mm.
okay not having a relationship with him. It's been 33 years. Like, I
Right.
mean, it's not that I say that very flippantly.
No.
It is because I have more respect for myself.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hmm. And I
And
know people want to label it as, "Oh, you're just bitter or you're angry." You know what? Bitterness, anger, resentment, all of those are natural, healthy, normal, understandable, and completely justified emotions
mhm.
in response to harm that people
That's
do.
right. That's
You know,
exactly right.
And feelings don't follow forgiveness. You will still feel all of those things if you
Mhm.
try to forgive. But I've found in my life that when don't forgive, that person no longer lives rent free in my head. And
Yes,
I don't have all of these emotions because I'm not trying to forgive them for the
that's right.
unforgivable. You know, I feel my emotions, I honor them, I name them, I respect them. And whenever they pop up, I'm like, oh yeah, you bet. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That
And
was
giving
not
yourself
okay.
permission to, you're damn right I should feel that
That's
way. I have
right.
every right to feel that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've really been holding back and not using
Oh,
bad words.
sorry.
Bad words. I've never referred to them as bad words. But anyways, yeah, you're right. That's exactly how I feel. And you know, I never would have talked like that before. You know, I just was raised that it was unnecessary and it was uncouth kind of. But strong emotions require strong words, you
Yes.
know,
Strong.
language to be able to fully express what you're saying. And I found that being able to use those words, it's so cathartic.
Yeah.
It's so healing, you know, and it's almost like kind of giving all of that the finger and
Right.
you know, just saying I don't care anymore.
Exactly.
Your other people's opinion. I was a people pleaser all of my life, you
Mm-hmm.
know, especially as a pastor's wife.
Yeah.
And I'm done with
Yep.
that. I really honestly do not care what people think of me anymore.
Yep. And
So,
and it's time to honor yourself. You know what I mean?
yes.
It's time to,
Yeah.
that was the hardest thing when I first started like seriously deconstructing. Because I'd
Mhm.
say it started when our son was born. Those little thoughts started creeping in my head. But then, 10, 11 years ago, when things were really hitting the fan, um, I had no idea. And so sometimes things do come out, like when you start figuring out, like, this is what I
Mhm.
like, this is what I will accept, this is what I will not accept.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to, like, that just kind of comes like flooding out, or it did for me anyway. And
Yes.
so you learn, like, I have learned to harness some of that. But there are
Mhm.
times where, yeah, it's like, it's time to live for me. Like,
That's
that was
right.
probably the hardest thing because it was like, I'm 61. And so it was like in my early 50s. And I thought, man, so much of my life has gone by and I've been doing nothing but pleasing other people. And I was mad. I was really
Yes.
mad, but I needed to be
Yes.
mad. I needed to be mad.
Yes.
And because I feel like when you have those strong emotions, or at least this is how it was for me, then I'm not going to
Mhm.
let that happen anymore. You don't get to
Absolutely.
dictate. You don't get to tell me how to feel, how to
Mhm.
respond.
Yes.
And so, like, honoring yourself is just so incredibly important.
It really is. And, you know, if I could just leave women with that message, like
Hmm.
if they take nothing else away from this discussion,
Hmm.
have enough respect for yourself
Yeah.
to not allow other people to make you betray your integrity and conscience in
Isn't that
whatever it
amazing?
is.
That is such a good way to put it. I mean, and that brings some sadness to me because how long have we betrayed ourselves?
Yes.
I did for so long, so long. And
Yeah.
and I do not feel one bit of guilt
No.
for finding my authentic true self. Not one.
Exactly.
Not one.
No, and no. Like I can't like guilt is for that is like not even an option.
Hmm.
You know, like
Hmm.
I am so thankful
Hmm.
and um just there's just this peace and this deep-seated fulfillment and happiness that I have now that I never had as a Christian
Right.
woman.
Right.
And like you honestly can't. And that's why you're always pursuing the fruit of the spirit.
Hmm.
And they're always just out of reach or you're almost there but you've never quite
Yeah.
fully
Never.
arrived.
Nope.
And I feel like as soon as I left, I had all of the fruits of the spirit completely effortlessly in
Hmm.
abundance in perpetuity. And I was like, what? Like, what is this? Like there's so much freedom. And wrapped up in all of that freedom is so much beauty. Like, I don't know. I'm
agree.
so grateful.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to be out of it.
Yeah.
And it's the best thing that I ever did. My only regret is that I didn't do it decades earlier for the sake of my kids.
Right. I would echo that. So as we kind of wrap up, like share it in whatever detail you want. Like where are you now kind of in your in life's journey? I hate to say journey because I don't want to say like spiritual journey because it's just it's your life's journey. Like where are you?
Yeah. I am not a believer at all. Actually, my spare time is happily spent debating theists and just trying to help them to see the plain truth that what they're believing is a lie. And it's really fun. I think it is so fun to expose predators and lies and to stand up for the truth. I was actually telling a friend yesterday and today that I feel like my purpose in life is to be predator's worst enemy. A predator's worst enemy, like holding them accountable, making sure that I hold their feet to the fire. And, as a religious trauma informed abuse advocate, I got sick and tired of pulling people out of the river. And I started going upstream and confronting the people that were throwing them in.
Yeah.
The Christians who are perpetrating these harmful beliefs, as sincere as they are, because I was sincere too, and I still harmed people. So I feel like I can do that with authenticity and without malice because I was there. I have the utmost compassion for well-meaning Christians, but a lot of well-meaning Christians double down, and I don't tolerate that. Like I'm not going to pussyfoot around their emotions. I'm going to tell them exactly like it is. Like, this is not okay. This is harmful. And honestly, a lot of times I tell Christians the difference between you and me is that I'm a genuinely good person. And right now you are being a genuinely not good person towards me. And I would never tell you that you deserved eternal conscious torment or to suffer, or that I was going to pray for you that God would allow something bad to happen in your life so that, you'll come back around. Like I would never treat you or anybody that way. That is the difference between you and me. I am actually a genuinely loving person. And I don't need a God or a book or an authority or a threat of punishment or promise of reward in order for that to be true.
Right. That was, something Carl and I talk about that a lot, just how, we haven't gone down some slippery slope. We aren't out there committing crimes or anything like that. I mean, we actually feel that after leaving the church, leaving Christianity, leaving organized religion, that we are more loving because as you were talking about earlier with LGBTQ plus, like we weren't allowed to quote unquote love them. We could love them, but
love the sinner, hate the sin.
Exactly. That kind of stuff. And so, now it's no, there is no condition to our love of humanity. So
I often tell believers, love the believer, hate the belief. Absolutely. I respect you as a person. I absolutely do not respect your beliefs. Your beliefs are not deserving of respect. You are entirely free to believe whatever you want, and I will fight for you to have that freedom, but I will not respect it because you are harming people. Actively. As sincere and genuine as you are sincerely and genuinely harming people.
Yeah. So very good point. How can people find you? Like, because you said you have, you are out there like doing the work, Sherri. And so how can people, if they have questions, like you said, women are coming to you kind of under disguise, if you will, just because maybe they can't just be out there, how can they
Sure.
find you?
My most prolific profile is Facebook, and that is just Sherri Bothwell, my name. But because of the high traffic volume on my page, it's difficult for people to message me because I don't know. I get so many messages. I think Facebook just doesn't even bother. So if you want to reach me, probably the best way is through Instagram, which is, I think the handle is Mrs. Mom to Many.
Yeah.
And then I also do have a TikTok page under my name, Sherri Bothwell. I love TikTok, but honestly, a lot of what I talk about is very triggering to me. And so it seems like for whatever reason, I have all these ideas for TikTok videos. And once I do one, it takes me a couple days to recover.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what's up with that, what my body is trying to tell me, but I have learned to listen to my body. And I have no end of ideas, really good ideas for TikTok fodder. And I am looking forward to actually really starting to do them faithfully, because I quit my job to watch my granddaughter full time. And so I have a lot of extra time and a lot less stress in my life to be able to let those creative juices flow. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
I love that. And that brings me to one last thing, and I'm sure as a grandma you can relate, but isn't it just so beautiful to look at your grandbabies and not worry about their salvation and all that?
Yes.
I mean, I just like you said earlier, Sherri, it has allowed me to just be present in
Yes.
a real I'm just
Right.
I can't even bring the words
There's just
to
a contentment to it,
and just
just
yeah, and when like you said, when our kids were growing up, there was more of that. We have to worry about their
stress.
soul,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's just a beautiful thing that my grandchildren aren't worried about where they're going to go, the age of
Yes.
accountability, any of that nonsense. And they're just
Right.
free to be who they are. And I am just
Absolutely.
so grateful.
Oh,
So,
yes, me too. And I still feel bad for like my nieces and nephews who are still steeped in it. Like it seems like everybody's getting married and having babies within the IFB still. And I mean, I can't even make myself go to the weddings or the bridal showers or the baby showers anymore, because I am just so overwhelmed with grief
yeah,
at what these kids are being born into. I can't do it. I cannot rejoice with these
yeah,
people. I can't be
yeah,
happy for them.
yeah.
It is that harmful. And yeah, it just breaks my heart to see these kids, because I know the abuse that they're living with, and it's completely normalized, and it's called
Yep.
love. It's not okay.
Yeah, it's not okay. Well, I am so glad that we had this opportunity, Sherri. I consider you, even though we've never met in person, I just consider you just a treasure. And
Same.
thank you for always I mean, there have been times that I have just reached out to you out of the blue and been like, this is what I'm struggling with. And you
Yeah.
have just been just a voice that I'm able to do that with. And I so appreciate that.
I
So
love that. Anytime, I love to be that for anybody that needs that, because
I,
I wish I had somebody like that when I was going through it and I
right.
didn't. So,
Right, exactly. Well, thank you
yeah.
so much. And for our
Yes.
listeners, feel like do reach out to Sherri. If you want to reach out to me, you can too. But Sherri is just, like I said, she's a treasure. And so we just thank you for joining us today, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.